Okay, today is 6.3, Impact and Reconstruction. Students will be able to analyze the impact of Reconstruction by completing a Reconstruction overview. So what Reconstruction is how did we essentially unite the North and South after the Civil War? So how did we reunite the North and South after the war? The impact of the Civil War, just to give you an idea of where we were at right after the war, 600,000 men died during the war. It was the deadliest U.S. war. Still to this day that we have ever fought in. In 1863, so after the war had started, we instituted the 1863 draft law. Many of you are familiar with the draft, meaning that if you get called, you have to go to war. And it was and this impacted men ages 20 to 45. So that was a huge age range. But you could avoid it by paying $300. So many people or anybody who was wealthy was able to pay to get out of the draft, meaning that unfortunately a lot of people that were economically disadvantaged were the ones that were fighting in the war. And this led to draft riots. So what happened was white men were angered by losing their jobs to freed blacks and didn't want to serve in the war. And so they then attacked African Americans because they said that they were the ones taking their jobs. We don't want to go fight in this war. And as a result, 12 African Americans were lynched, which means to be hung. We also had a Republican Congress. Now, something that I want you to know, Republican is a political party. Abraham Lincoln was part of the Republican Party. So Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. It's a different Republican Party today than it was in 1865. Okay, so be aware of that. It was a very different environment then. And they expanded the government role in economic issues. They promoted business development. They expanded the railroad. So the Transcontinental Railroad, you're going to need to know this. Oh, sorry, team. Let me spell that right for you. Okay. So the Transcontinental was done or was finished in 1869, so you could travel from one end of the country to the other. We had the Homestead Act. The Homestead Act gave you 160 acres of land for $10, but it was west of the Mississippi. So it was an effort to establish land west. And then the Morrill Act. The Morrill Act gave states money to establish universities. And this is how we got a lot of our state schools today, was because of the Morrill Act. Okay, so what was the impact of the war on our country? It's the only war that was fought on U.S. soil after we became an independent nation. And there was a huge difference between what happened to the North and the South after the Civil War. So the South was economically devastated, right? A lot of battles were fought in the South. A lot of land was destroyed. A lot of infrastructure was destroyed. And so they had a huge lack of food. You had Sherman's March, which he burned all the way from Atlanta to Savannah. So infrastructure was destroyed. Meaning roads, railroads. So it was hard to transport food from one place to another. Farmland was destroyed, so you couldn't make food. The North was more divided. In the North, we saw banks and factories. Made a lot of money. Whereas the ordinary workers suffered. We also see women begin to run farms and businesses because, again, 600,000 men were killed. So it forced women into the business world. However, women were paid less. Not that that's surprising. And learned how to manage with scarce resources. One woman from the Civil War, Rose O'Neal Greenhow, was a Confederate spy. So she was a spy for the South. So anybody who's studying the Southerners, this might be somebody you want to look into. This is actually a picture of her from jail. She's with her daughter. And just remember one last thing. The war was fought mostly on Southern soil. So that's what caused a lot of shortages in the South. Okay, Reconstruction. So Reconstruction lasted from January 1st of 1863 from March 31st of 1877. So for a good long time in an effort to try to repair the relationships between the North and the South. On April 14th of 1865, so about a couple years after Reconstruction began, Lincoln was assassinated and Andrew Johnson became president. So this is a recreation over here of the assassination. And so Reconstruction was viewed as a failure. People wonder if Lincoln was alive, if that would have changed. But there was two different political views amongst the Republican Party. The first was the radical Republicans, where they felt the South needed to be punished. And they wanted voting rights for African Americans. And the second group were moderates, and their main goal was they just wanted to reunite the country. Johnson gave control of the Reconstruction to the radical Republicans. And was eventually impeached. So Reconstruction itself, again, the attempt to reunite the North and the South together. So Southern states were not allowed back into the Union. They were under military control. Some of you have seen some of this promised boxes that people had to sign during your research of I promise my faith to the Union, and that was all because of Reconstruction. But the problem was it caused a lot of backlash in the South, which led to the creation of Jim Crow laws. Which was essentially allowing segregation to happen. In 1867, the Reconstruction Act was passed, and that was where Southern states needed to ratify or pass, that's another word for ratify, the 14th Amendment in order to rejoin the Union. And we'll get to what those amendments mean in a minute. The other thing that was created was the Freedmen's Bureau. And the Freedmen's Bureau was a government institution that was supporting freedmen. And what it would do would try to provide homes, obviously to provide everybody with a home, some clothing, food, fuel. Sorry, that's wrong. Fuel. And medicine. There were 3 post-war amendments that were passed. The 13th abolished slavery. The 14th made any man born in the U.S. a citizen. Any man or woman, so any person born in the country a citizen. And then the 15th Amendment is a right for men, and men only, women doesn't come till the 19th, right for men to vote. And then finally in 1877, we had the Compromise of 1877, which essentially ended military occupation in the South. And ended Reconstruction. And there you go.